Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, folks who are coming in. As you are entering, and while we have a couple minutes before we actually formally begin, open up your chat dialog box and tell us where are you located? What city, what state, what country, what world, whatever. Where are you located? Larson, Mitch, where are you guys located? You can use chat too. Austin, Texas. Thanks, Chris.
Yeah,
Mighty Austin.
We're here in the Denver area, but I'm down here in Littleton, Colorado.
Littleton, there you go.
I'm in the downtown Denver area.
There you go. Salt Lake. Hi, Mike.
Nice.
Minneapolis. Hi, Scott. Actually, while we're doing this, using the chat dialog box, folks, and you, Lecompton, Kansas. Thanks, Nigel. Do remember that the chat dialog you can send to host and panelists only or to everyone. And for the purposes of today, just bear that in mind. Curiosity question, what are your job titles for those of you who have just come in? What are your job titles? Which people are announcing. Account executive, hello from Auburn. Hey, Auburn, director of pre-sales.
Sales,
solution engineer, solution consultant, sales engineer, all the same basic job title. By the way, Benjamin, I had no idea there was a software company in Auburn, or are you just living there? Let's see, New Jersey, which exit? Thanks, Tom Barlow. Senior manager at Charleston, SE, San Jose, sales enablement. Oh, excellent.
Nice.
And while we're doing this, any objectives that you have for our session, anything you'd like to learn or see discussed in particular, live there, company fully virtual. Thanks, Benjamin. Auburn's a nice place. For those who know, no explanation is necessary.
Never been to Auburn.
You've never been?
No.
It's right on the intersection of Route 80 and on the way up to Tahoe if you're going east. And it crosses with Route 49, which is, of course, the Gold Rush route. All right, so any other folks in terms of job titles or interests that you'd like to see covered in our session today before we get started here? Going once. Customer discovery consultant, San Jose. Improve my skills of discovery. Okay. Sean, need to find a platform to put a sales training learning program onto. All right. Thanks, Nancy. Got the guys at DemoFlow really excited. Anyone else that's joining, type in the chat dialog box where you're located, what your job title is, and anything you'd like to take away from this session.
Discovery questions, active listening.
Discovery, active listening. I like that. Birmingham, Alabama. Application engineer. Zachary. Libertyville, better discovery skills. Interesting. Okay, good.
Libertyville, Illinois. Nice. I'm originally from Peoria. Southeast.
Denver.
Nice.
All right.
Oh, Josh,
Denver ideas for office decor. Well, I can recommend black and white images.
Want a few bucks?
There you go. Prep tips for discovery single demo meeting. Little play in Peoria. Thanks, Sean. All right, Mitch, are we about ready? Or
as the last few folks are trickling in here, let's get things kicked off with a few introductions and make sure that you are in the right place of sure all the webinars that you signed up for today. So if you are looking for first call demos and discovery, a surprisingly effective approach, you are in the right place and you are with the right gentleman to talk to you about that today. Just a couple of housekeeping items. We are recording today, so we'll follow up with all the good stuff of the presentation, the recording. Please do at the bottom of Zoom, the webinar here, you guys are probably all familiar, but there's a Q&A section. Feel free to use Q&A and add questions throughout. We will hopefully have 10 minutes at the end to answer any questions. And of course, if you've ever been in a webinar with Peter, there will be lots of chatting and hopefully some interaction throughout. Please do use that chat. So just to introduce ourselves just a little bit, my name is Mitch Belzy. I'm the head of customer success at DemoFlow. I come from a world of customer experience and designing customer experiences. I've been with the DemoFlow team since December, and go figure, I'm really in charge of all things customer, from onboarding to helping out with the product. So I'll be hosting here today along with my colleague and good friend Larson Stairs. So Larson has spent a ton of years in SaaS sales from the ground level all the way up to leadership. He's realized a gap in the market in sales efficiency and collaboration, and hence he built DemoFlow. And so we've been working together for a while. Yep.
I was going to say, before you go on, I got to ask the audience, the cartoon character that's pointing at Larson's photo, aren't those frighteningly similar?
Hey, Larson. Oh,
Pointing at me.
Hey, Larson, pointing at Larson.
Except for the tie.
And then last but certainly not least, we have Peter Cohen, founder of the second derivative, The Great Demo. Peter probably needs no introduction with the crowd here. Best-selling author, consultant, world-renowned trainer, has helped software companies and other companies all around the world. And I had to look on Amazon for some quotes, and it was on LinkedIn. They said, Peter knows more than anybody else in the world how to deliver an unforgettable presentation that connects with the greatest number of people. And he's funny to boot. So I like that. I like that comment a lot. So lots to live up to here, Peter. So without further ado, I'll pass it away. If you want to go ahead and take over screen share, and we can jump into it here.
All right, let's get this set up. Gentlemen and ladies in the audience, if you can hear the sound of my voice using the chat dialog box, type voice or sound or something like that. Make sure this is working. Okay, good. And if you can all see my mouse at the top left of the screen, type mouse or rodent or small mammal. There we go. How about bottom of the screen, same thing? Mickey. That's clever. All right, same thing. You guys are so cute. All right. Actually, curiosity question. How many of you have suffered through a Kohan webinar before? If you have, type suffer or before or yes. Let's see what we get. Many, too often. Okay,
Too
right.
often.
All right. Fine. Thanks. Then many of you probably repeat trauma. Many of you probably are familiar with this. How many of you remember what these three numbers mean to get things kicked off? And I'll give you a hint. This was a study done by a company called Intercall of what people are doing during sessions like this. So any question, well, any guesses as to what the 65% refers to? And Larson and Mitch, you're welcome to guess as well. Any guesses? Multitasking. Yes, some of these guys have seen it. That is absolutely correct. Doing something else other than what we have in mind. What's the 55% talking? Yeah, exactly that. What's the 55%? This one I love. See if anybody remembers or knows. Social media? Close. It's this. So the eating portion makes sense to me, but making food, chopping onions, what are texting? I love it. And then, of course, the 21% are people shopping online while you're trying to have a discussion, a conversation, a webinar, which explains why the Amazon stock price is up somewhere around 3,400. So with that, what is this person doing right here? Everybody type it into your chat dialog box. That's right, all three. And this is what I am probably facing right now. All right, ladies and gentlemen, how many of you, and use your chat dialog box, how many of you have ever delivered one or more demos where you knew they were just a waste? The prospect was poorly qualified, it was way too early in the process. Okay, yep, many. And I guess the question I should ask is the graphic here evocative and correct, or is it perhaps this one here? What do you guys think? If it's left, type left. If it's right, type right. Let's see what you guys come up with. Timber. Okay, exactly. Sorry about that. Now, what we're really talking about here are our two things. One is how to reduce this waste, and number two, waste paperbacks. Good. Yeah, you're so funny. I was looking for images on the web. Just give me a break. Number one is how to reduce the wastage in the process of delivering demos, new and discovery and related. And number two, to potentially compress what is often viewed by the sales folks as a very orderly process of an intro call, an overview demo, a discovery call, a deep dive demo, a POC, and on. So how many of you are interested in finding a way to compress this, squeeze the funnel, and make it that much more effective? Type yes or and how or something positive. Hand raise. Okay, we got it. All right, with that, ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce you to my disclaimers. So number one, I'm not making any claims as to whether or not the things that I'm going to be sharing here are particularly effective with respect to inbound versus outbound, complex versus product-led products, on-prem versus SaaS, and the other things you read here. I am simply introducing some basic principles that I hope will be helpful. So with that, let's talk about the flow. And let me grab my annotation tool here in PowerPoint, which shall be a pen. So what we're talking about here, just for the sake of argument, is potentially an inbound lead and a potential first call, which might be on the order of, let's say 25 to 45 minutes in length. And what we're going to touch on here are a handful of aspects. Number one, a terrific way to start the call. Number two, something called the menu approach and a vision generation demo, which is designed to provide the prospect with what they're looking for and yet at the same time move things into a gentle but firm discovery conversation. We'll talk about discovery, and then we're going to introduce the idea of a go, no-go event during this conversation. And finally, we'll talk about, if there's time for this in our session today, some elements of technical proof demos that you could potentially do in this same call, believe it or not. And although I don't think we'll have time to get to these, if we do, we can talk a little bit about value and pricing and these ideas of soft close. So, question for the audience, how does this flow and agenda look? Give me a yes, no, or other, if you would, please. Okay, looks good. All right, so with that, has anybody here ever suffered through a discovery call from me? If you have, type discovery or yes. I'm just curious. So it looks like no is the answer. Oh, Eric, you have. Okay, fine. And Benjamin, too. Okay. Do you recall the first thing that I asked? I believe it would have been something like, so tell me, before we begin, how did you ascend to this position of power and authority at blank? Now, question for you. Why did I ask that question before going into anything else? Any suggestions? Type it in your chat dialog box. Any suggestions? Icebreaker. That's exactly correct. Put them at ease, butter them up, engagement, get them talking. Yeah. And this is exactly the point. We as humans, strangely enough, although we will profess that it's not true, we are typically most comfortable talking about whom? Ourselves, exactly. And this part of the conversation is fabulous because when somebody starts to talk about themselves and particularly their history, you begin to get some very interesting information. What's their background like, wherever they've been previously, what their job title experience was, how long have they been with the organization. You're actually already in discovery, and it's absolutely delightful. So this is a tip. Before we go into the topic, tell me a little bit about yourself. How did you end up joining the company? What attracted you to DemoFlow or whatsoever? All right, so before we go on, let me turn this over to Larson and ask if he has anything to add with respect to how DemoFlow might support this kind of thing.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I'll add is this is a really critical piece, and you're exactly right, Peter, is starting the conversation by just asking them a bit more about themselves. It certainly helps to get context on who you're speaking with beforehand. So maybe you know the right questions to be asking or secondary questions after that opener, just to get them a little bit more open, build that rapport a little bit more effectively. In our solution, it basically helps you have a whole people tab that helps to gain context on who the people are that you're speaking with in the room. And so if there's any new attendees, it's a good way to get additional context there. Additionally, whether you have or haven't met with this person before, what I always like to do when I open up calls, just as another personal tip, is let's say Mitch is the first person. I've never met Mitch before, and Peter, you and I have had a previous call potentially. I like to isolate that person and say, hey, Mitch, how can we make this a good use of time for you here today? Or dig a little bit deeper on that specific person when you get somebody ad hoc that might join the call, whether it's a first or a second one. But getting that context on that person and dig a little bit deeper on their LinkedIn so you can build that rapport very quickly is a really effective strategy.
There you go. All right, ladies and gentlemen, any comments or questions on this before we move to our next topic? I missed the notes section on LinkedIn. There you go. All right. Let's talk about a terrific way to engage as the next portion of this. And let us say that this was an inbound call. They have clicked on the book a demo button, so our prospect here is interested in a demo, and they have an expectation that this meeting is going to involve a demo. Let's also assume that we really don't know much about our prospect other than what they may have filled in on that lead form and on LinkedIn, the research that we've done. So Mitch is our prospect. Everybody say hi to Mitch. And Mitch, say hi to everybody.
Hey, everybody.
There you go. And Mitch has clicked on that button. I've reached out to him because he says, I'm interested in a demo. I asked Mitch, what are you interested in? And he says, well, I don't really have good clarity as to what you guys do other than what I saw on the website. So what I might do at that point is say, well, let me set this up a little bit. One of the biggest challenges that we have in dealing with these first call scenarios could be referred to as a Goldilocks dilemma. And by that, traditional overview demos are often what? Far too much. Can you imagine an hour for an overview? That means that the deep dive is going to be terrifying. Now, on the other hand, that's the traditional approach for many organizations. The other hand, most marketing canned demos are just too little. They're insufficient. So what we're looking for here is a Goldilocks solution, something that is, and everybody say it together, just right. So here's an introduction to hopefully what just right might feel. So, Mitch, you reached out to us. If you take a look at my screen here, what you can see are 5 areas where we've helped other heads of sales. And by the way, Mitch is a head of sales of a mid-sized software organization. So, Mitch, as you can read here on your own, there's more better leads. Well, you take a look at these. Which of these items might be most important to you to start with?
Well, they all look like something I'm interested in, but the most important, I think, to me right now would be forecast and pipeline clarity.
So forecast and pipeline clarity. Terrific. Well, let me share with you then how we've helped other heads of software sales in similar-sized organizations address some of their challenges. So what you're looking at here is a summary of how we've helped some other, heads of sales effectively achieve or exceed their quarterly and annual quota. What they told us in many cases is that they were using Excel or email to try to roll things up. They said it was a pain in the hoo-ha. It took freaking forever to get things done. They said it got worse as they moved towards the end of quarters. Very often they had to ask IT for help and go back and forth. And they said fundamentally that their reports spent far too much time with the process. When we chatted with these folks, what they said they were looking for was, first and foremost, visibility into their forecasts and their pipelines. They wanted rapid access to the current, up-to-date, true numbers, and they wanted to be able to inspect the key opportunities and have insight into individuals' rep performances. Well, we provided these capabilities, and what we hear from our customers is they've been able to generate an incremental $2 to $4 million in revenue and redeploy sometimes as many as 1 to 4 full-time equivalents to other more valuable tasks. So let me ask you, Mitch, how does this compare with your situation? Where is it similar? Where is it different?
That's a good question. I don't really have rapid access to my current numbers. So I think that the speed and ability to get to some of this information is really is priority for me.
Okay, and how are you doing it today?
Through a lot of different channels and way too many people, unfortunately.
Way too many people. Now, we're going to step out of role play mode here for a moment, but everybody type in your chat dialog box, what has just happened? What has just happened? You guys get it? Anybody? Nobody's, there we go. Conversation about the real need, opening up. We are now in something called discovery. We're beginning to talk about his pain points. I would now, in real life, I would go on for a few minutes because I have to keep in mind that he has an expectation that he's supposed to see. What did he ask to see? He asked to see a demo. So, yeah, there we go. So I would go for a few minutes, probably as long as I felt he was comfortable. And then I would say, hey, Mitch, there are a pile more questions I really need to ask you, but would you like a brief example of how we've been helping other heads of sales address some of these issues?
Yeah, absolutely. That'd be great.
Well, terrific. Well, what you're looking at right here is an example, exactly an example of how we're doing this. So here is, for example, the sales pipeline overall. You can look at the various stages, qualification, needs analysis, et cetera, et cetera. Here, though, is where things get useful because we can see, or you can see, I should say, the breakdown for each of your reps in terms of where they're spending their energies, prep meetings, email, and so forth. Here you can see the overall breakdown in terms of the forecast, but again, here you're able to look at each individual rep and where they need help or they don't need help. So you can see, for example, actually move this out of the way, that whereas Wendy is freaking terrific, it looks like Roger is either very early in his processes or needs some substantial. This is the kind of screen that has enabled other sales leaders to be able to get rapid visibility into what's going on with their forecast, their pipeline, and their reps, and enable them to increase revenues on the order of 2 to 4 million, and redeploy a handful of headcounts, sometimes as many as 1 to 4 in similar-sized organizations. Is this the kind of thing that you might have in mind?
Absolutely. It seemed like magic, Peter. You took me right where I wanted to go.
Strangely enough, one of the key principles of great demo. By the way, for those of you familiar with the methodology, what we're doing here is doing the last thing first. But let's go back to our flow here, because what's going on here is I have now satisfied his desire to see just enough of a demo for him to get an idea of what is possible. And that then releases the tension to see a demo, and I can now go back to a discovery conversation. So let's do a quick, whoopsie, let me click and do a quick. So let's do a quick drill down here of what we need to do and what was going on in the background. So I offered a menu of 5 choices here to Mitch. And he, in this case, because I told him to do it ahead of time, he chose this one because I had that one directly prepared. But what this suggests is that for each menu item, you should have an example, informal success story and accompanying illustration, in other words, key screen from your software, to drive those portions of the conversation. This is known as the menu approach that leads into a vision generation demo that then leads into discovery. So that's a quick, if you will, peel back the layers of that idea. And what we're doing is indeed positioned as a Goldilocks solution. It's not an overwhelming demo. It's not too light. It is just enough to enable this to begin to take place. So let me pause there and ask audience-wise any questions or comments, and let me pass it over to Larson, because I'm sure there's some things in demo flow that can support this process.
Yeah, certainly. We'll keep an eye out for any questions here. But you know what I love what you did there, Peter, is A, you're in touch with enough of what your customers' needs are and the potential directions that initial call can go. But also, what can be arguably more challenging is having the collateral at your disposal and the correct flows to pivot to those sections of the conversation to help to generate that vision generation demo, and to do so in a very fluid manner. So it's not always that common where your prospect or audience on the other end knows the direction you want to be going. And so what I'd love to show everyone here is just a way that we can help to make this really easy by way of pivoting when you want to approach this in a menu generation type of format here, and how we can make that pivoting really seamless here. So let me jump, share my screen here. And so you all be able to see my screen right now?
I'm actually seeing my PowerPoint slide still.
That's exactly right. So, tricky that way.
Oh, he fooled me.
Yeah. So basically, if we're at a menu approach like we're seeing right here, so within demo flow, we have, this is my presentation window. So I'm showing you all my view, not you all as like a prospect or audience. But when we want to have this menu approach and different courses or trajectories that we can go on, the beautiful part about what our solution provides is exactly that. You can present that menu and then quite literally pull from a library of content and say, you know what, I actually want to pull in a specific flow. Maybe it's, I want to run a quick pocket demo here and pull in these pieces and just say, you know what, this is the direction that we want to go in the trajectory. And it pulls that right into the fold, and it can actually automatically include the browsers you want to be showing and chunk down to the pieces that correlate with the menu approach that you want to be taking. And so this can really be a very fluid approach to changing direction and really creating that intrigue that you want to. And Peter, the other thing that you did extraordinarily well was you don't stop discovery. You intrigued, you put in a customer story in there too. You showed some end results. You asked a deeper question, which digged further on the pain and the need there. And then and only then did you pivot to live platform in the presentation there. So you were absolutely sure and confident that it was the right direction to go before actually showing product, which can be a really critical error, in my opinion, that people can take, where they're like, cool, that sounds great. You want to see this? Let me talk to you for 20 minutes about everything that we have in our solution. Keep it short, keep it concise, and keep it very pointed to the menu approach And don't forget to ask questions throughout that process. That's just one of the ways that we can help to turn this kind of menu approach into a reality and do so in a very fluid fashion.
There you go. By the way, Mitch, for your edification, Sean just offered a comment that I think should be your marketing theme: seamless pivoting. Seamless pivoting.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And we do have a couple questions that came in. I don't know if you guys want to hold on to them or pause for one or two here.
Let's take them.
Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah. Scott asks, how do you keep from rabbit trailing?
What does he mean by rabbit trailing?
I don't know, Scott, if you can give some clarity maybe into the chat.
We may have to hold this for later. Rabbit trailing. Down the rabbit
Down the
hole?
rabbit hole.
Okay, down the rabbit hole. Personal discipline. There's a subtlety, though, about what I did, and that is I did not actually show the live software, and I did that causatively. In this case, I captured a full screen of the software exactly as it would appear to a viewer, but because it's PowerPoint, there's no way that I can actually go down that rabbit hole. It's a subtlety that I gently recommend. But the other approach is just be disciplined. Remember, this is all about the prospect. All right, let's continue in the interest of time. And let's actually ask the question. Did we answer that question sufficiently for you? You can answer in the chat and let us know. Yep.
Yes.
Okay, thanks, Scott. All right, let's talk about the discovery conversation itself. Why would we want to do discovery? Let's take a look at 3 ideas in discovery. This is, to a certain degree, the heart of this session. Why do we want to do discovery? How much do we need to do? And what should we cover are the questions I hear you crying. So with that, how many of you, well, let me ask it. Put it in the chat dialog box. What happens when discovery is insufficient? Let's see your answers. What happens when discovery is insufficient? Harbor tour, yeah, you've been in this before, absolutely.
Yeah.
What else? Unfocused demos, lost revenue, transition back, yep. Oh, yeah, that's terrible. Wasted time, yeah. Here is the short list of what happens when discovery is insufficient. Yeah, SE tears, I like that. Now, on the other hand, what about the bioirritation? Good. What happens when discovery is done well? Well, I'm just going to share some ideas here. You, in fact, may enjoy some sustainable competitive advantages, both from the standpoint of working with prospects, as you see here, and as customers. So if anybody ever needed a few arguments on why to invest energy in doing a better job with discovery, these 2 slides might offer you some help. All right, with that in mind, that's why we would do discovery. The question now is, how much do we need to do? So what do you guys think? Type in your chat dialog box. What do you think? See what we come up with here. 10 questions, 20 questions, bioirritation, an hour per person, clear pain, okay. Qualified? Ooh, Joshua, I'm going to reach through the screen and smack you. Definition of pain and solution fit. Okay, I think you guys are getting there. This is ongoing throughout. Thank you, Isaac. This is another Goldilocks dilemma, particularly in first calls. So before we dive in a little bit further, we're going to do a mini example here. Mitch, let's say that you have had what you believe is the flu. This is pre-COVID or post-COVID, okay? You believe you've had the flu. You've had it now for a week. You finally get tired of it, and you go to the doctor, you go to the hospital, and you present to doctor number 1, and you say, I think I may have the flu. So, Mitch, go ahead and say it.
I think I may have the flu.
And I'm doctor number 1, hospital number 1. I say, yeah, you know what? Everybody's got it in the Denver area. It's going around. Tell you what, I'm going to prescribe for you this new drug called Fluvigon. Go ahead here, take it through the webcam, if you would, please. There we go. And start taking the pills, and you should start feeling better in about a day or day and a half or so. Okay. Mitch and the audience, 2 questions. Number 1, how did you feel about that interaction? And number 2, what's the likelihood you would take those pills? So let's see what we got. Mitch, what did you think?
Yeah, honestly, I would have wished for the doctor to be a little bit more thorough, especially on the other side of a global pandemic, to maybe do a little more discovery.
Okay, it looks like Chris and others agree with that. Absolutely. So Mitch is uncomfortable. He goes across town to the hospital number 2, doctor number 2, and he presents and he says again,
I think I have the flu.
And I ask, I'm now a female doctor, how long have you had it, Mitch?
It's been about a week and a half, almost 2 weeks now. I feel horrible.
Really? 2 weeks now. Are you running a fever?
I have been, yes.
How high?
About 102, almost 103 at one point.
102. Has it been steady or going up and down like that?
It's hard to tell, but pretty steady for the past couple days.
I see. Okay. Any sweats?
Oh, definitely at night.
Oh,
Absolutely.
really? Okay. Nausea?
Yes, yeah, quite a bit, especially in the first few days.
Morning sickness?
No,
All right.
not quite
So,
that.
okay. So we go on, and I continue to ask another 10 doctor minutes of questions, which is a long time, as we all know, in an examining room, at the end of which I offer Mitch exactly the same prescription. So same 2 questions. How did you feel about that interaction? What's the likelihood you'd get that prescription filled and take those pills? Mitch, what do you think? And audience, what do you say? Better
Yeah,
and yes.
I feel much more comfortable. Yes.
Yeah, and what was the difference?
You were more thorough without kind of over asking, right? You asked the right questions.
So this is a really important point with respect to discovery. Doctor number 1 came up with the right answer, but he was not trustworthy, he was not believable. Even though Doctor number 1 may have had sufficient information in his mind to form a prescription, we, the prospect, felt uncomfortable because not enough questions had been asked of us. And as Andrew just said, we did not feel heard. So when you're talking about how much discovery needs to be done, we need to think in terms of 2 parameters. Number 1, actually, Larson, just read this out loud if you would.
When the vendor has sufficient information to confidently and clearly propose a precise solution.
That is a definition of successful discovery for the vendor. And Mitch, read number 2.
When the customer believes that the vendor has a sufficient understanding of the customer's situation.
Exactly that. And what you were supposed, let me grab my annotating tool again. What you were supposed to do was emphasize this word. Do it again.
When the customer believes that the vendor has a sufficient understanding of the customer's situation.
This is huge. Those of us who have been in an industry for many years have a tendency to suffer from what is known as what? Does anybody know? Well, we know the answer before we even ask the question. Yeah, expert syndrome. Yeah, and Eric is I was curious if anybody would come up with it. It's called the curse of knowledge. So what we need to do is pretend that we don't know anything about our prospects. So how much? We need to satisfy our own needs to capture information, but we also need to make sure that our prospect feels sufficiently heard. All right, with that, well, let's talk about what to cover. And this is yet another Goldilocks dilemma. How many of you are familiar with BANT? Budget, authority, deed, and timeline. Top BANT or yes or whatsoever? Okay, how many of you would say that BANT is sufficient for discovery? Hint, hint, read the top of the slide. Okay, good, thank you. Would you guys like a classic example? This happened to me a few times before I finally caught on. I had reached out, as a senior leader, reached out to some software companies interested in their offerings. And it was still very early in the process, and I got an SDR talking to me who said, is this an active project? And I said, well, not yet. He says, well, do you have budget? Well, not really. Are you, the person who's going to make the buying decision? I said, well, I'm part of the team. He said, do you have a defined set of needs? I said, well, we've been living this for years and we're still working on it. He said, do you have a timeline? I said, nope. And what I had hoped for and asked for was just a vision generation demo, just to get a sense of what's possible. And guess what happened since I answered all these to the negative? Guess what happened?
No demo.
No demo. I got DQ'd, exactly that. So the second time, here's what happened. They said, budget, authority, need timeline. Budget? I said, absolutely. They said, are you the person in charge? I said, you betcha. They said, have you got a defined set of needs? Oh, yeah, we're in great pain. Timeline? Yeah, we need this yesterday. Guess what I got? I got my demo. Of course, it was a 1-hour harbor tour overview. So BANT alone is insufficient. That's the too little side of the equation. Here is, for your amusement and edification, the full great demo discovery methodology listed out, if you will, in outline form. And if you really did this well, this is probably about 2 hours of questioning and discussion with any particular individual. So this is a pretty rich set of questions and template to follow. What we're looking to do then is to form a Goldilocks solution, which means We got to cut out all the stuff that we don't need in our first call. And what that yields is something that might look like this, something that you can probably do in about 20 or 25 minutes of conversation, maybe a little more, a little bit less. We actually already did the opening about you. We can ask about questions that are easy to ask and easy to answer. Tell me about the team, how many folks, what are their backgrounds. Tell me about your workflows and your processes. Tell me about your environment. Then and only then do I suggest actually asking about this word right here. Does anybody know why I don't recommend starting with people's pain, but instead leading to it? Does anybody know? And that includes Mitch and Belfi. Excuse me, Mitch and Larson. Sorry, Mitch and Larson. Anybody know why I recommend this? Negative context in a conversation? Yep. Understanding is paramount. Reluctant to share? Yeah. It's too early. It's just too early. How many of you have ever heard the phrase, so tell me, what keeps you up at night? And my answer typically is, well, I'm going to do this very rudely. Idiot SDRs who ask me the question, what keeps me up at night? So flow in terms of discovery is really important. And I suggest putting the pain portion of things right in the middle of your discovery conversation, where they're comfortable, they feel like you've established some credibility with them, some trust, and they're willing to share. Then you get off pain and you go through some of the other things that you need. Tell me about your environment. Tell me about who else is impacted. Are there any cultural uniqueness attributes that we might need to know about? And so given the constraints and limited timing for our webinar today, I just wanted to introduce this for you. If it's something you'd like to explore further, let me know, because I've got some materials I could probably share with you. All right. Got to know where you're going in discovery. I cannot tell you how many times people will say, yeah, I do discovery. And I say, well, how do you know when you're done? They say, here's one way to tell. This is a great demo situation slide. It has 6 simple elements. And when these are complete or reasonably complete, your probability of success in terms of this moving forward to some kind of close, whether it's you or somebody else, is rather high. So it's on a job title by job title business, understanding this person's top level challenge, the problems, reasons, that's the typical pain portion of things. The specific capabilities are exactly that. It's what this person says he or she needs, in his opinion or her opinion, to solve the problem. The delta is the value associated with making the change expressed in tangible terms of the prospect's numbers. And a critical date is a date by when the solution needs to be in place and active. So with that in mind, we've now covered the 3 major aspects of discovery for first calls. Let me pause here, ask any questions from the audience, and pass things over to Larson.
Yeah, I'm curious if there's any questions here. And I have a question for you, Peter, as a point of discussion,
yes,
but I'm curious if there's any audience coming in. But so one question I have for you.
Gone.
And just loopy gone in discussions. I've experienced this. We do disco demo on the same call, typically on the first call. But sometimes you can get people that show up expecting a demo immediately and get a little frustrated with the questions that you could be asking on the front half or the length of them. I don't know if one thing that I've done to help for that, and I'm curious to hear any tips that you have, is like setting the context at the beginning of the call and saying, hey, I'd love to ask you a few questions, understand more about yourself. And then, if there's a mutual fit, we'll save some time to give you a taste of what demo flow is like in the product and how we might be able to help. Does that sound fair? Just to give people a general structure of the call and how it's going to happen. I don't know if you have any best practices there, Peter, on how you can ease that tension there that when that might present.
So that is exactly what this piece is all about. The menu approach is immediately bringing the prospect into this. Here are a series of topics that we could discuss. Let me know which of these are most interesting to you. It's not about us, the vendor. It's all about you. And then based on what they choose, you're going into a vision generation demo process. Let me share an example of how we helped what might be other similar folks. Here's an example or 2 or 3 of screens that they used out of our software. So they're actually getting what they want within those first 8-ish minutes, 8 to 10 minutes of this first call. Does that help?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's a great tip. And that's pertinent, really pertinent.
All right.
Yeah, we do have a
Go ahead.
question over here from Sean. Sean said that he's seen situations where the ISR does very early discovery as part of the lead generation. Then later down the road, when the lead is promoted to a qualified opportunity, the AE or SE engages them, and the very first thing they want to do is a discovery call. And Sean's saying he's seen that this leads to the buyer having a feeling of deja vu in a not good way. How do you alleviate this double discovery or this handoff of information?
Well, there's two ways to do it. One is, and somebody Tom said, and I totally agree, that's not discovery. That's just doing BANT. Most SDRs are really qualifying the prospect for the benefit of the vendor, not the prospect. There's nothing in it for them. How many of you, so on a second and related topic of that, how many of you have ever called the telephone company and been transferred from one representative to another? Do they ever communicate what you've just gone through? No. So yeah, what's your name, what's your information, what's your problem? So the moral here is, if you're going to have one member of your team ask questions, do remember to have that information passed along. And in fact, Larson, is there anything in demo flow that might facilitate that process?
Certainly. One of the things that we do extraordinarily well is just giving context to everyone that's on the call. So when SDRs come into a conversation or they had that qualification call, here, I'll walk you through something here real quick. Basically, what I can do is right here from a side panel, I can access all of my Salesforce information and all the information that the SDR ideally put into the record there, whether it be account notes or opportunity notes that we need to be accessing. So what I like to do at the beginning of calls in that type of situation, and trust me, I used to be an SDR, so I did the poor qualification calls, passed them off. I've been there, done that. So what I like to do is start off the call, set the context about what I know and what I've learned, and try to be more forward with that to reduce the deja vu effect, and then prepare a proactive and thoughtful question that could really inspire good conversation and show that I've done my research. I'm up to speed. I reviewed the last call. I know the notes, and I'm getting us started off on the right foot here. So those are some of the practices that I have, and ultimately how our solution can potentially help out to get that context. And so we reduce that deja vu effect.
There you go. And of course, one of the best thoughtful questions ever to ask is, of course, what is the meaning of life, universe, and everything? See if anybody knows the answer. There we go. Everybody knows the answer. All right, good. Thought it was right. That's pretty funny. All right, let's talk about one or two other quick topics, and then we get to look to wrap this up. Let's talk about a discovery summary and a go, no-go mutual decision. So, summary, if you've been using a situation slide context as your end point for discovery or your capturing point, a simple way to do a discovery summary is to review your situation slide information. So, Mitch, if I understand correctly, you shared your top-level challenge is to make your numbers. You said these following things, blah, 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 blah. I believe you said you're looking for these things. We talked about value. You said you're looking to increase this much. Have I missed anything, or is this all correct?
No, yeah, that's all correct.
Okay, terrific. And then that takes us to this, a go, no-go decision. Now, why do I introduce this idea? Because you're typically looking at two sets of audiences. You're looking at audiences that are in an active buying process and they want to move forward, in which case you do. However, many folks, as I described in my case earlier, are not in an active buying process, but rather they are just browsing. So what do we want to do with the folks that are just browsing? Do we want to invest more time with them? Probably not. However, we do want them to move into a active buying process in the future, so we add them to our nurture or trickle marketing program. This is a really easy thing to do. It's to just very gently yet firmly say, so should we continue the discussion? Is this something that you'd like to pursue, or would you like me just to send you some information and add you to our nurture marketing list? Let them have that decision point. That will save you the energy. Let me ask this in the form of the question. How many salespeople constantly hound prospects who went to this point in a discussion with a, are you ready to buy? Are you ready to buy? Are you ready to buy? Have you ever seen that happen? Give me a yes, no, or other in your chat dialog box. Okay, that's exactly what I thought. So A go, no go, twice today. Thanks, Eric. Yeah, so a mutual go, no decision is a terrific way to make that assessment. Larson, any comments or thoughts there?
No, I think you hit it right on the head. I think it's good to ask your, potential buyers, if calling it out, hey, is this something that you're actively interested? If not, how would be best to engage you into the future, and how can we keep you up to date on the improvements that we're making, so when the time is right, we can pick up the conversation. My job is not to be annoying, although sometimes it is, but is to follow up with you with professional persistence in a way that you like to be communicated with. I think you hit it right on the head, whether that be marketing kind of newsletters that are going off, follow up with me via email in a couple months here. Any of that is really good options to help to engage that buyer.
There you go. All right, let's spend a few minutes on the last topic, technical proof demos. Now recall, this is the same call. This is the first call. It is possible to actually do a bit of a proof demo in this same call based on this information right here. So Mitch, our prospect, says he needs rapid access to the current numbers and status. These capabilities that you're seeing here under specific capabilities, this is exactly what he needs to see in the software. No more and no less. So whatever I show should be focusing effectively on these 4 items. Now, as we do that, we need to be cognizant of his depth and level of interest. So I want to introduce this ancient technology. Does anybody remember what these are called? See, type in your chat dialog box. What are these things called? Somebody typed birdcage liner recently. Paper of news. Thank you, Steve. Isaac. All right. By the way, news on the web is presented exactly the same way that I'm going to be sharing right now. So let me ask you the question, how do you choose which article you want to read? What do you scan for? Anyone? And Mitch and Larson, you can respond. Headlines, absolutely. Clickbait, you guys are funny. Yeah. So you scan for the headlines, and based on the headline that's most interesting, and in many cases the images, you decide you're going to read, for example, this article. Now, do we read the full article all the way through? What do you guys say?
Sometimes.
Depends. It depends on your depth and level of interest. As Joshua said, depends on the content. Newspapers know that most readers who are just interested in a quick summary will only read the first paragraph or 2. And in fact, in newspaper terminology, that is known as the, does anybody know? As in, don't bury the blank. By the way, I had been spelling this incorrectly for the lead. I had been spelling it L-E-A-D. It's L-E-D-E, as Chris actually just wrote. Don't bury the lead. It's a crisp summary. If we're interested further, we will continue reading as far as we have interest, as somebody said here, above the fold. And in fact, American newspapers know that most readers never turn beyond where it says, please turn to page 4C. Instead, we pop up and we start scanning for the next article, the next headline, lunch, or whatsoever. Newspapers teach, and by the way, news on the web is done exactly the same way without the fold. Actually, I wonder if they have fold concept. Anyway, journalists are taught this process of organizing the content. Does anybody know the geometric shape that they're taught to write to, if you will? See if anybody knows. Triangle. Tom, you're so close. It's called, well, actually, Tom, you're right. That is a triangle. The journalism people call this inverted pyramid. We know that pyramids are 3-dimensional, so you're absolutely correct. But the point is very useful. It is designed to put the most important stuff where? At the very beginning of the article. And as you go deeper and deeper, you're getting to finer and finer levels of detail. We can apply the same idea in the fabulous world of demos by starting with the most important stuff and then effectively working with our prospect to help guide us as deep as they want to go. Everybody type aha in your chat dialog box. Second topic I want to introduce, and then we're going to wrap this up, is the idea of any pathway in a software demo. What we teach in, thank you, Steve. What we teach in Great Demo Workshops is this idea of just do it. And what it really means is, well, there are 2 ways that one might get from point A down here up to the viewpoint that we're standing standing on. One would be to do what? Follow the road. Oh my God, I don't know if anybody's going to get car sick as I do this. But what would be the other approach? And Larson and Mitch, what would be the other approach?
Maybe a straight line.
Maybe a straight line. And what I'd like everybody, zip line down the PowerPoint. Jetpack, I love it, Phil. What I'd like everybody to do, even if I can't see you guys in the audience, is everybody put your hands up like this and say the following words: fewest number of clicks. So everybody say it.
Fewest number of clicks.
There you go. Fewest number of clicks. That should be your mantra for any pathway in demos. And for a final idea, let me share with you less is more. Let me share with you 3 words that you should avoid like the plague, particularly in the early portions of a demo. So fewest number of clicks is what we're trying to do. The 3 words are, does anybody know why? Mitch, Larson, anyone? I'll give you a hint. What happens when you say, now if this happens, you get branches? Yeah, it creates multiple paths, rather. So now if you want to do this, let me show you how to do that. Oh, by the way, there's 3 different ways you can do that. Oh, no, there's another whole way of doing it. If you want to take a 3-minute demo into a 30, just use those 3 words. So just do it. Everybody say it again. How many clicks?
Fewest clicks possible.
There you go. All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is the content we were hoping to cover. Let me turn things over to Larson and see if there's anything else he wants to add at this point. Otherwise, we can entertain questions.
Yeah, I think, and that was a great overview there on the technical presentation. And one of the questions that Phil put up in the Q&A that I think is really interesting, and one that I'd love to address, and curious to get your thoughts, Peter, is how do you manage when someone wants to go into the weeds on deep technical questions? And that's a delicate balance of maintaining control of the conversation while making sure someone feels heard in how they're presenting. And one strategy that we deploy makes it, fairly easy to do so is, I know Peter has seen this and likes it, but he coined it the parking lot, where you have questions that come up and I can actually say, let's talk about this technical question. And maybe this could be something that I say, let's talk about this a little bit later on a subsequent conversation. I see you, I hear you, we will absolutely review this. And one of the best parts about our solution here is at the end of my presentation, I can review all of these questions, next steps in a cohesive summary slide, so we can make sure that we're set up correctly for the next conversation, whether it be questions that go unanswered or next steps that we need to mutually be discussing. But Peter, how would you recommend as well, in addition to managing that conversation?
So that is what you just said. Let me share my screen again. So what I do in the old ancient manual world is I have ready to go in the background. This is what DemoFlow does so well. I have in background a document that says questions, and I would capture that question and say, so Mitch, have I captured that correctly? Just say yes.
Yes.
And what I like to do then is defer this until a little bit later, or we can do this as a follow-on call. Is that acceptable to you? And he says,
Yes.
yes. Releasing you to go back to the rest of your demo, your flow. Why this works so well is because the prospect actually sees it captured and participates in the decision-making process. And somebody asked, Isaac, when presenting to executives with compelling interest, what's a safe pathway? First demo after discovery? I think the answer is yes. Isaac, I may need more information on what you've listed there in your question, but I believe the answer based on what I'm reading there is yes. In any case, Larson, yes. Parking lots are absolutely fabulous, and this is a really nice capability to be able to integrate into your DemoFlow deck. Mm-hmm. Any other questions? Going once. Going twice. All right, let's wrap this up.
Cool. Well, Mitch, I don't know if you had any kind of closing slides here or wrapping up on our end. Yeah, I'd say certainly thank everyone for the time here today. If you're interested in trying out our solution or getting in touch with us, we'll follow up with everybody. There's been a few questions around the recordings and if that will be shared. Rest assured that will all be shared with you. I don't know, Mitch, if you have any other closing thoughts there as well.
Not necessarily. I know, Peter, you were going to go over some resources here, but just to reiterate that once everything gets compiled together, we'll send you over everything that you saw today, along with the recording and other resources. But yeah, I'll pass it over. I know, Peter, you wanted to highlight a few resources, I think, maybe from your website.
Sure. GreatDemo.com. There, as you can see here, under the resources page are a pile of articles, including some on topics just like this, as well as the blog. And if you want a copy of the presentation, just send me an email to, as you see right down here at the bottom, pcohen@secondderivative.com, and I'd be very happy to send it to you right back. Folks, I hope you found this useful. I look forward to any follow-on questions. I'll be happy to entertain them afterwards. And I want to emphasize that what the folks at DemoFlow have put together is a very elegant solution to these first calls and subsequent calls.
Well, thank you, everybody. Really appreciate the time today and for the attention. And thank you, Peter, for the great presentation. And if anyone has any questions, feel free to follow up with us directly. Thank you all for the time.
Bye, folks.
Bye-bye.
Everybody.